NASCAR fines Ty Gibbs for his actions this past Friday night. Was it the right call? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. We've got lots to discuss today. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're going to talk about Ty Gibbs and the fine NASCAR handed him in just a few moments, but we have a couple other stories I want to touch on first. NASCAR VP Scott Miller, we've talked about him many times in the past. He was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio earlier this morning, and he addressed several very important topics, one being Martinsville, what can be done to improve the racing there after Saturday night's Cup race was, as I said at the time, unacceptable. He also talked a bit about the huge penalty NASCAR handed RFK. This is the first time, to my understanding, that NASCAR or a NASCAR official has actually dove into some of the details. So I want to talk about that as well. Let's begin with his Martinsville comments. So Scott Miller was on the morning drive against SiriusXM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. It's safe to say most fans who watched this past Saturday night's Martinsville race were not satisfied with the product. Very little passing, no spins, the bump and run almost seemed glitched. It was an uneventful race, especially by Martinsville Speedway, the half mile of mayhem standards, and drivers afterwards seemed to have a hard time agreeing on one main culprit. Many blamed the really cold temperatures, which prevented rubber from being put down, prevented the groove from being widened at all, also limited tire fall off and tire wear. Some pointed to the added element of shifting 4 times a lap. Others pointed to aero issues with the new car. Some pointed to the wider tire adding grip, making it hard to bump people out of the way. You name it, every driver had a slightly different theory. Well, Scott Miller this morning on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio addressed these concerns, saying, it's awesome having an event at night. There's a certain flair to that, but I think the cold temperatures, like a cold night, is definitely more of a challenge than everyone understands. I think that played into some of it over the weekend. We'll just keep getting all the input and make some decisions on next time going back. So Scott Miller putting a lot of the initial blame on just the abnormally cold temperatures. He did say that he talked to a wide variety of drivers as well as Goodyear after the race. And he mentioned that NASCAR is planning on adding an additional tire test at Martinsville later this year. Right now, there's already an organizational test scheduled for late August. The next Martinsville race, of course, is the second to last race of the season, October 30th. So it sounds like they're going to add another tire test between now and then to hopefully iron things out, change the compound maybe before the fall. Now, while Scott Miller first brought up the cold temperatures, he also mentioned possibly NASCAR will look into changing the gear ratios, which may limit the number of times drivers end up shifting. Maybe they don't start shifting until much later in the run. And he also mentioned and addressed some of the aero concerns drivers had, saying it was really hard to ride right behind somebody. Big cars, high speeds, aero is always going to come into effect. Aero issues at Martinsville were prevalent with the Gen 6, especially back when they had that higher downforce package a couple of years ago. So not sure what can be done there, but when it comes to the tires, when it comes to the weather, obviously the weather's always changing. And when it comes to the gear ratios and shifting, there are definitely things NASCAR can change in the short term to hopefully improve the quality of racing in October. So just wanted to mention that. Glad NASCAR and their officials aren't shying away from the fact that, Saturday night's race was unacceptable. Martinsville is a great historic short track, and what comes with that are lofty expectations, and Saturday night just looked like guys riding around for 400 laps. It was not exciting, especially not by Martinsville standards. I'm glad NASCAR is addressing it. Hopefully the right improvements and changes are made before October. Let's talk about another topic Scott Miller brought up on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. That massive Brad Keselowski RFK penalty. Again, we talked about yesterday, it was upheld last week by the appeals panel. Keselowski said it was an issue with the rear tailpiece, that the team was trying to repair it before an upcoming race, and apparently they did not repair it to NASCAR's liking. Scott Miller added some detail to that today, saying, the repair policy is very straightforward. Any repair that is done is to bring the part back to the original specification. On this part, that was not adhered to. There were body mounting landings that are a part of the rear fascia that weren't brought back to the original specifications. That's a key design feature of the part. The repair policy was not followed. That's really what it comes down to. A critical dimension of the part was altered. He then talks about the strict penalty system as a deterrent, saying that that's something the teams asked for this offseason, which we already knew, but we hadn't gotten that level of detail around the Brad Keselowski 6-team penalty. I don't know enough about the part itself to have an opinion there, but I'm at least glad that someone at NASCAR, albeit perhaps a couple weeks late, is finally coming out and giving fans some necessary details about this penalty. A season-changing, earth-shattering penalty like the one they handed the 6 team deserves a proper, transparent explanation. Like, you can't expect Brad Keselowski fans to be satisfied just hearing that their driver got hit with a massive penalty. They deserve answers. They want to hear exactly why he was penalized. They're not questioning the penalty, but they want to know exactly what happened, because otherwise it's just frustrating to be left in the dark like that. I can only imagine. Not to mention other people in the garage, other competitors deserve to know what the infraction was so that they hopefully can avoid the same infraction. I'm glad NASCAR finally came out and gave some sort of detail. They could still go further, like they didn't say exactly what the problem with those body mounting landings was. Just says they weren't within proper specifications. So we could still get more detail, but I'll take what I can get at this point. Glad to hear some level of explanation from NASCAR themselves. Anyway, now lastly, and actually Scott Miller talked about this on SiriusXM Radio as well this morning, but let's talk about the penalty NASCAR handed Ty Gibbs last night. Yesterday, NASCAR handed Ty Gibbs a $15,000 penalty for his actions this past Friday night after the Xfinity race at Martinsville. But not for the fight. No, not for confronting Sam Mayer, not for throwing punches with his helmet still on. No, NASCAR handed Ty Gibbs this $15,000 penalty for running into Sam Mayer's car on pit road. Not even for the stuff immediately after the checkered, which, we showed you, the Fox broadcast caught him running into Mayer through 1 and 2 and on the backstretch. I don't even think that's what did it. He ran into him again once they had started to make their way actually onto pit road, and at that point, there's the potential of crew members and officials standing around. Any sort of contact like that on pit road after the race is heavily frowned upon. I had to go back a little bit. I remember Brad Keselowski in 2014. Remember that infamous Charlotte race when he was in the garage doing stuff, ran into Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth on pit road. He was fined $50,000 for that back in 2014. Now, NASCAR usually tailors these penalties based on series. Cup Series penalties are usually a little heavier than Xfinity, which are usually a little heavier than trucks. So yeah, $50,000 for a Cup Series guy doing this, $15,000 for an Xfinity guy. It's on a similar scale. Now, of course, this is Ty Gibbs. $15,000, it's a slap on the wrist, if anything. To me, where Ty Gibbs was really penalized this past weekend was in the public eye. Ty Gibbs' reputation amongst NASCAR fans and even drivers and competitors in the garage plummeted to all-time lows. And that's the kind of thing that's tough to rebuild. It's going to take a long, long time to try and rebuild that reputation. He will be booed loudly for years to come, so he better start getting used to it. It's not impossible for him to overcome this reputation. I look at, and I'll mention Brad Keselowski again, back in 2014, 2015, he was getting booed on a weekly basis, and he still gets booed some today, but I've been to enough races the last couple of years to know that there are plenty of cheers for Brad Keselowski when his name gets introduced at driver intros. Somehow, some way, he's been able to win over many fans once again. Of course, Kyle Busch has failed to do that. Joey Logano still gets quite a few boos, but it's not impossible for Ty Gibbs. I do hope he learns from Friday night. Ty Gibbs has the talent to be great in NASCAR. He's already won a bunch of Xfinity Series races. Sure, he's in the best car in the series, but he's doing things in that car that only Kyle Busch has done previously. He's going to get to the Cup Series at some point. He's not going to win races every week in the Cup Series, and when that happens, when he starts losing races consistently, how is Ty Gibbs going to handle that emotionally, mentally? Because that's where all my concerns lie at this point. Ty Gibbs has not demonstrated enough emotional maturity at this point for me to believe that he can bounce back from hard times, that he can struggle for a few weeks and eventually pull himself out of it. I'm not convinced he's capable of that at this point, because since he's been on the national spotlight in any way, he's been in the best car, so he's been winning. That's not going to be the case when he gets to the NASCAR Cup Series, and we've already seen time and time again, he's not emotionally mature enough or aware enough to understand that if you bump people, you need to expect it back and not lose your head. Because that's what this weekend was about. A week ago, he bumped his teammate racing for the win at Richmond. Then he drove through his teammate in the final corner to get the win, didn't give his teammate even a fair shot to race him. Acknowledged after the race that, hey, I wronged John Hunter Nemechek, he owes me one. And then a week later at Martinsville, he gets bumped out of the way, not even for the win, sure for the dash for cash maybe, but not even for the race win, and he completely lost his cool. It's like he forgot everything that happened a week earlier. If you're gonna dish it out, you gotta be able to take it. And Friday night was one of the most glaring examples of hypocrisy I have ever seen as a sports fan, let alone NASCAR fan, just as a sports fan. I am still somewhat shocked by how Ty Gibbs handled the end of that race at Martinsville. The fine, justified, it's in the NASCAR rulebook. They fine people for this in the past, so Ty Gibbs just has to eat it. He will, it's not gonna hurt him in the long run or anything like that. I just hope he's learned. Because as I mentioned, Brad Keselowski turned his reputation around over the course of several years. It's not too late for Ty Gibbs to start doing the same thing. He's gonna win races. People are gonna support him for that fact alone. But if he ever wants to be seen as one of the likable heroes of the sport, He's got a lot of work to do. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What do you think of NASCAR penalizing Ty Gibbs, fining him $15,000? What are your thoughts on any of Scott Miller's comments that we just talked about? Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Again, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future uploads. And as always, a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters as well for going above and beyond each and every month to support the channel. I couldn't do this show without your tremendous support. We'll be back soon. More to talk about before Bristol Dirt this Easter weekend. I can't wait. It's going to be exciting for sure. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you again real soon.